defend the homeland by providing intelligence support to seal our borders against illegal immigration and narcotics trafficking, advance America's interests in the Western Hemisphere, and enable the Golden Dome, President Trump's next-generation missile shield, deter China in the Indo-Pacific through a new generation of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities matched to the threat in support of combat-credible military forces in the Western Pacific. Support increased burden sharing with allies and partners to maximize return on investment while ensuring America's interests always come first. The MIP will emphasize rebuilding our military intelligence capabilities by reviving our defense industrial base, reforming acquisition processes, including a greater focus on better informing DoD investments with intelligence and rapidly fielding emerging technologies. It prioritizes investments in American workers and technology while maintaining strategic partnerships with key allies. The MIP will develop and retain critical intelligence capabilities domestically, focusing on American interests to maintain our position as the strongest and most lethal force in the world. I will also note that the MIP will reflect the Secretary's emphasis on strategic discipline and fiscal responsibility, including optimizing and aligning our workforce, and his commitment to passing a financial audit. These and other priorities reflect the enterprise's continuing focus on providing decision advantage against near-peer competitors. In summary, the MIP will support the Department's ability to execute its programs needed to address these global challenges, and your support is critical to achieving the President's vision of peace through strength and ensuring that our intelligence capabilities remain second to none. I thank the subcommittee for its leadership and support, and I look forward to answering your questions here and in our closed session.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And General Hartman, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Jackson, Ranking Member Crowe, and distinguished members of the committee, I'm honored to be here today representing the men and women of the National Security Agency and United States Cyber Command. Thank you for this opportunity to testify before you today with my Department of Defense Intelligence Enterprise colleagues. At the National Security Agency, our workforce supports our policymakers by providing unique, timely, and exquisite insights for the nation's top priorities. As a combat support agency, we provide critical support to our warfighters in encountering a multitude of threats facing the nation today and in the future. The men and women of both Cyber Command and NSA are key to our mission success and serve as a competitive advantage across all of our mission sets. China remains our pacing threat. Countering their efforts to challenge the United States as well as their aggression in the Indo-Pacific is a top priority. U.S. Cyber Command and NSA are focused on using the full scope of our authorities and full spectrum capability to counter China's aggression. We remain ready and postured to contest China's malicious activities across the globe in lockstep with our allies and our U.S. government and industry partners. U.S. Cyber Command and NSA remain focused on achieving mission success across the spectrum of the President's priorities relayed to us in the Interim National Defense Strategic Guidance. In developing our FY26 budget request, in partnership with the Department of Defense and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, NSA is focused on administration priorities, including defending the homeland, modernizing our capabilities, as well as our core function of code making and code breaking. As examples, both organizations have taken comprehensive and concrete actions in support of Homeland Defense, including improving our support to U.S. government disruption activities with cartels operating in Mexico and along the southern border, and in the development of Golden Dome for America. Our nation is confronted with an increasingly complex and dynamic threat landscape in the cyber domain. However, I want to ensure you that U.S. Cyber Command and NSA are at the forefront of this challenge, armed with unparalleled capabilities and insights that place us at an advantage against our most formidable adversaries. Our dedicated professionals are actively defending the nation, including the defense industrial base, from sophisticated nation-state actors and cyber attacks. We are not merely reacting to intrusions. We are proactively identifying and analyzing the tools and tradecraft our adversaries are sharing. We share these critical discoveries publicly and will partner with our partners to empower a collective defense that strengthens our nation. I know this committee is highly supportive of our missions and our people, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to testify in front of you today.
Thank you, General. I appreciate that. And General Kruse, the floor is yours.
Chairman Jackson, Ranking Member Crowe, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to present the Defense Intelligence Agency's assessment of the worldwide threats to our nation and our posture to address these increasingly complex challenges. DIA is dedicated to providing not only the warfighter, the acquisition community, and the senior administration officials with timely and accurate intelligence, but also to the Congress to assist in your role in countering threats to the United States. The men and women of DIA in 140 nations around the globe are focused every day on delivering intelligence that strengthens defense of the U.S. homeland, enhances warfighter lethality, supports effective and efficient acquisition and countermeasure development, counters foreign intelligence entities attempting to steal U.S. information or penetrate our networks and supply chains, and increases mission sharing and interoperability with trusted U.S. allies and partners. Our efforts are more timely and more important than ever. The current threat landscape is changing more rapidly than at any time in my 35 years in uniform. Our adversaries are deepening cooperation with each other across multiple domains and developing and proliferating advanced technologies which generate novel methods to threaten our interests. Starting in the U.S. homeland, we face a twofold threat. First, along our southern borders, transnational criminal organizations, drug traffickers, and terrorist groups are attempting to circumvent host nation laws and evade U.S. law enforcement, including by exploiting migration flows, to conduct activities aimed at harming U.S. citizens. Our longstanding cooperation with U.S. law enforcement agencies has enabled DIA to respond quickly, and DIA has surged analytic, collection, scientific, and technical capabilities to support U.S. Northcom, U.S. Southcom, the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI. Second, our adversaries are pursuing technological advances to improve their ability to directly threaten the U.S. homeland with military capabilities, including expanding the scale and sophistication of their conventional and nuclear-capable missile systems. China and Russia are building a diverse array of delivery systems to exploit gaps in current U.S. ballistic missile defenses. They are developing hypersonic glide vehicles, as well as fractional orbital bombardment systems, which are ICBMs that enter a low-altitude orbit before re-entering to strike targets. DIA is currently providing the authoritative intelligence assessments to assist the department in designing and deploying the necessary defenses to support the Golden Dome for America initiative. And during the future operational phase, DIA will provide collection, sensor networks, data fusion, and operational support to detect and counter strategic missile threats to the homeland. Our priority threat, as described in the Interim National Defense Strategic Guidance, is China. The Chinese Communist Party is rapidly developing military capabilities across all warfare domains: air, land, sea, space, and cyber. And all these are designed to seize Taiwan by force while preventing intervention by the United States or other third parties. Along its periphery, China is executing multi-domain pressure campaigns against the Philippines, Taiwan, and others that resist its territorial claims. In response, our China Mission Group stood up in 2022 to synchronize DIA and enterprise analysis, collection, and intelligence operations against the global China threat. And since then, numerous intelligence disciplines have increased collection by at least 30% against China, and we have brought new collection and exploitation capabilities online. DIA has also increased analytic production by double digits, and through our Machine-Assisted Analytic Rapid Repository System, or MARS, and the Common Intelligence Picture efforts, we are delivering next-generation foundational military intelligence to the warfighter, and soon will deliver real-time, authoritative, force-tracking data layers to enable all-domain, AI-enabled battle space awareness, warning, and sensor-to-shooter capabilities. Additionally, China's advancements in AI, biotechnology, quantum sciences, and microelectronics are heightening the threat environment and positioning Beijing to dominate a range of advanced and emerging technologies that are foundational to military innovation. Beijing is working to integrate AI into a variety of military capabilities, including uncrewed systems, decision support systems, ISR, cyber, and influence operations. And to meet this challenge, DIA is redesigning its collection strategies and enhancing MASIT, human, and open source capabilities, ensuring that we stay ahead of emerging threats and technological advances. Regarding other threat actors, Russia remains a significant, aggressive, and enduring threat to the United States and its neighbors. Moscow has remained steadfast in its demands for Ukrainian neutrality, authority over the size of Ukraine's armed forces, and is a further partitioning of the Ukrainian state. Russia will continue its military strategy of attrition, focused on degrading Ukraine's ability and will to resist while facing its own significant losses of equipment and personnel. With this threat environment in mind, I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide our insights and our perspectives during our discussions today. It's an honor to join my colleagues, Mr. Gard-Weiss and Lieutenant General Hartman, before this subcommittee. I'm truly privileged to lead the Defense Intelligence Agency and represent its talented and dedicated workforce who serve with distinction and in harm's way all across the globe. We're grateful for your support, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. I appreciate that. And we will begin questions, and I will start by recognizing myself. Mr. Gard-Weiss, I was just going to ask you a real quick question here. I'll just read this real quick because some of our audience may not fully appreciate this, but the U.S. intelligence community is statutorily comprised of 18 organizations, 9 of which are elements of the Department of Defense. The Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the National Reconnaissance Office, U.S. Air Force Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance, U.S. Army Intelligence, U.S. Naval Intelligence, U.S. Marine Corps Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Enterprise, and U.S. Space Force Intelligence. That's a big piece of the pie. I would like to ask you, and I won't say, are you getting everything that you need, because the question of that answer is usually no, but do you think that your piece of the pie of the DoD budget is sufficient to do what you're being asked to do today?
Chairman, thank you for the question. I am incredibly proud of the work that our enterprise does today in support of the Department of Defense, our warfighters, our commanders, the Secretary, and the President. The threat environment that we're facing is increasingly complex. You mentioned in your opening statement that we're facing China, the pacing threat, while we're responding to events around the world. Right now, what I can tell you is that we're postured and aligned to support the priorities of the Secretary. And I look forward to having a conversation with you once we're able to discuss the details of the FY26 budget about the areas where we're taking risk and where we are aligning those resources to ensure that we are taking less risk in priority areas.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'll do everything I can, and I know the other members of this committee as well, to make sure that you have everything you need, because our warfighters obviously can't do their jobs without the support that you provide. For General Kruse and General Hartman, I just want to ask you a real quick question. I think you both touched on this or mentioned this in passing. I know, General Kruse, you did with regards to China in your opening statement. But with regards to, this is partly why I asked this question as well, because we understand that the big focus in the military for the last few years has been to pivot and to great power competition away from counterterrorism, so on and so forth. But we also understand, and General Kruse and I recently talked about this, that the counterterrorism mission did not go away. It's still there. That support still has to be provided. But then you have other things that are also, really gaining, I'm sure, taking lots and lots of your time as they become more and more a part of your day-to-day expectations and what you're gonna have to deal with regards in particular to artificial intelligence, machine learning, and now open source intelligence. Can you tell me, are we keeping up with that, and in what ways are you approaching that so that we don't get behind the Chinese on this? What is your biggest hurdle here? I mean, what are you not getting, or what is your biggest concern regarding what I just mentioned in the day-to-day conduct of your mission? I'll start with either one. General Hartman, you want to start?
Chairman, thanks for the question. From our standpoint, we continue to be laser focused on China, and our plan to meet that threat is really dependent on technology like artificial intelligence. We know the Chinese tools are slower than us, and the way that we scale to meet that challenge is by leveraging the talent of our workforce and the technology that we have access to, particularly our relationship with private industry, which in the United States, we still have a strategic advantage as it relates to technology like artificial intelligence, and I believe that will continue to remain so.
Okay, before we go to General Kruse, I was just going to ask you real quick. So, do you think are you having any issues with recruiting people? I mean, I know that's always an issue, but are you getting good people that understand these issues that want to come into the organization versus going off into the private sector? And are there any authorities that you don't have? I mean, it's going to cost more money. Obviously, we understand that. But are there any authorities that you need from Congress that you don't have to stay on top of this and outpace the Chinese on this?
Chairman, we continue to get extraordinarily qualified young people from the services and from the civilian community that are experts in artificial intelligence and high-performance computing and machine learning. We certainly need the resources to provide them the technology that they need to work the problem. We've got a great plan for that. I think we'll be able to talk about that plan more when the budget comes out. But right now, I believe that we're very well positioned. We have a roadmap thanks to our work with Congress. We have stood up an artificial intelligence task force. We've executed over a dozen pilots. And I do believe we are positioned well. From an authority standpoint, there are really no authorities that we don't have right now in order to execute this plan.
Thank you, sir. General Kruse, do you have anything to add on that?
Just very briefly, I will just echo what General Hartman said. The workforce at DIA, we prioritized in the most recent series of personnel reductions and workforce optimization the retention of our younger probationary and recently recruited personnel because of the skills that they bring. And I think that will pay dividends for us in the long run. To your earlier question about where are we balancing and how are we taking risk, what I would offer is as the department writ large and as the nation writ large focuses on the priorities that are articulated appropriately by the administration, there is a need for a minimum capability to reside in the low priority theaters against counterterrorism, and I think that's the intelligence community's responsibility to be able to continue to collect at a certain level, to be able to give policymakers the opportunity to address those threats should they arise. And so for me, it is the challenge that we have is how do you balance the remaining capability on the lower priority systems while we move out extraordinarily aggressively. And I think when you see the 26 budget come forward, you'll see DIA and the administration reaching heavily into the current priorities. And we look forward to additional conversation of how those will balance in closed session.
Thank you, General. I appreciate that. I have some more questions I'll ask you in the classified session, and I'm going to yield back now and recognize Ranking Member Crowe for as much time as he would like.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to start by visiting this 8% cut issue. And again, I'm in favor of efficiencies and trying to find them where we can find them. And there are places where we could find savings for the American taxpayer. But this 8% cut, and I understand that some of your entities, you're able to define that just by expediting retirements, kind of natural attrition within your organization. But I'd love you, both of you, General Hartman and General Kruse, to very briefly talk about what the impact is going to be as you currently understand it. And I know you're still working through it. I'll start with you, General Hartman.
Ranking Member, thanks. Each year at the National Security Agency, we lose approximately 7% of our workforce through natural attrition. The difference in the 8% this year is it will be executed over a much shorter period of time, really about a 90-day period. And so that will be impactful. That being said, all of the personnel that are leaving the agency have done so on a voluntary basis. They have generally been retirement eligible, and they have taken advantage of one of these programs that allow them a bit more advantageous circumstances to leave. We're a large agency. We have a tremendously skilled workforce, and I do believe that we will have senior leaders that will move into the position and continue to execute the very important mission that we have to defend the nation at the National Security Agency.
General Kruse.
I think I would relay similarly. Every year we have 4 to 6% attrition across the agency, so we will do an accelerated version of that this year. Our targets were, as you saw from the Secretary, 5 to 8%. We will certainly achieve those percentages. But I have faith that the younger generation will step into those leadership positions. To answer very specifically, what is the impact? For those more senior people that are leaving, what I am losing very clearly are senior leadership, I'm losing expertise, and I'm losing combat experience. But I go back to there are people that are mid-grade that are going to step into these roles that also have combat experience from our 20 years of CT and will pick up the flag and run with the baton as quickly as possible. In a closed session, I'm happy to tell you where we're taking more risks than others. There will be impact, but I think great Americans are going to step into these roles.
And I have no doubt of that. I mean, I have no doubt that these younger, talented folks will step up and do their best. I think, you know, I think about my military time, and you all have experienced this a lot more than me. There was this process called the relief in place, right? When we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I was being replaced by a unit. It's called a RIP, and you know this. You rip out the other unit, and it's essential that those units overlap. And they have to overlap because the unit that had been there, that knew the locals, that knew the threats, that had learned all the lessons from the sector, all of that knowledge had to be transferred to the new unit. And if it didn't, if you didn't have that overlap, that knowledge was lost. And the new unit had to learn the lessons the hard way, sometimes with blood. So when you talk about expedited losses and retirements in accelerated timelines, to me it seems like we're losing that overlap that's essential, and there's going to be cost to it. General Hartman?
Ranking Member, thanks for those points. It will be more challenging, all right, and because of that, but we do know who is going to leave the organization. And for the most part, we know who is going to replace them. And it's my job as the person performing the duties of the National Security Agency to have a plan and to execute a plan that ensures we can continue to provide this fundamentally important mission for the nation. And I'm going to do that. And it'll be difficult, but that's what they pay leaders for.
And you're a ranger.
I am a ranger.
Like me.
Absolutely.
So you've been given a mission, and there's no doubt in my mind you will execute it to the best of your ability. But now it's incumbent on us in Washington to make sure that the mission you've been given is actually smart and makes sense. General Kruse?
The one additional thing that DIA has in its arsenal is, in addition to the headquarters and all the centers that are directly reporting to me, I also man the J2s out at each of the combatant commands, as well as the Joint Staff J2. And that allows me, when I have holes in expertise in very specific areas, to move personnel. So, for example, some of the key leadership positions that are showing up on the Joint Staff, we're bringing in personnel in Indo-PACOM to fill these roles to try and achieve exactly what you're talking about. How do you do a RIP, a replacement in place, when you're not actually in place? And so we're working through the lessons learned that we've done, and as we have led our units in previous ways, what is the modern version of that using modern technology?
Well, you all have a very hard task ahead of you, and I'm not going to wish you luck because luck doesn't do it. We're going to work hard to make sure that we resist policies that don't make sense and would put America in danger, and that we support you in that mission. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Crow. And Mr. Cisneros from California, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that. Lieutenant General Hartman, like you stated just a few minutes ago, right? You continue to get top talented individuals that come in, but it does take all these individuals to kind of get trained up and built up to speed. And General Nakasone used to always state that, you know, I get these individuals, they're there with me for like 2 to 4 years, and it's time for them to transfer right at the time where they actually really start to get good at what they're doing. I'd like to see how we can change that. I don't know if you feel the same way. I'm going to assume maybe you do, right? That, you know, you get these individuals built up and they get good at what they're doing, and then it's time for them to leave and transfer to something else. But how can we kind of work with you to kind of get it where maybe we can kind of get out of this mold that which is we do it this way because it's the way the military's always done it. You're in a duty station 2 to 3 years and it's time for you to transfer, but we're losing a lot of that knowledge and kind of shortening up and building that expertise before somebody goes on and moves to something else. But I would like to hear from you how maybe we can kind of fix that and get to them to that, instead of getting them to the point where they actually become good, keeping them there and allowing them to build their skills instead of transferring them.
Congressman, thanks for the question. I 100% concur with your analysis. We have, over the last couple of years, made significant progress working with the services in order to do really three things. One is to extend the tour length for an individual after they become fully mission qualified. And that's really important because at that point we can employ an individual, to the greatest, their greatest capability in order to work the mission. So that's the first piece. The second is a number of services for key work roles have supported multiple tours in either the National Security Agency or Cybercom. And then the third piece that we're really working is to ensure synergy between assignment policies at the National Security Agency and U.S. Cyber Command for the same work role. And so allow a service member to move between the agency and the command in a way that best utilizes their training and experience for the good of the nation. I think we're making good progress, and we've got a plan to continue to do so moving forward.
General Kruse, I'm sure the same thing happens in the intelligence agencies, so I'd love to hear your response too.
It certainly does. The workforce that DIA enjoys actually gives us a little bit of a buffer here. 70% of my workforce is civilian, and about half of those are former military. So I have this fantastic mix of civilian, former military, and active duty military. We have worked over the last couple of years to start to extend our civilian tours as we rotate around the globe, and several of the services are looking at doing the same thing. So that becomes really important for us. And then for new mission areas where I have low density, just small numbers, for example, in the cyber realm where we man the Cybercom J2, but we're also building up some additional capability at Congress's direction. My intent is to have those career paths actually be from service cyber into NSA, into Cybercom, into us, so we can keep people into the same mission space regardless of tour length.
All right, well, anything we can do to support that legislation-wise or anything, please let us know. Happy to support that fully. Lieutenant General Kruse, another question for you. We know during the first President Trump administration, he was at times kind of very cautious about some of the intelligence that he received from our stuff, and even had a tendency maybe to believe it from somewhere else. But and we can either take this here or maybe take it in the next round. But how can you work with the administration there to ensure that what you're giving them is going to be heard and that it's going to be kind of taken in as for what it is, and that this is good, actually good intelligence that you are presenting them?
I think you just hit on both sides of the coin. So I think we owe candid intelligence assessments, non-political, the best we can do, the most authoritative regardless of source, and then provide that. And it's building a trust relationship from all of our stakeholders. We've done this with warfighters for many, many years. I've worked with SOF. There's a really dynamic feedback loop. You're either good and you're trusted or you're not. And the same thing is actually okay with the administration. Our goal is to provide the most accurate intelligence that we can and build a trust relationship over time, and that's my intent to do so.
All right. Well, thank you both for your answers. Thank you all for being here, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Cisneros. And now recognize Mr. Scott from Georgia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And we all know that our prior president ignored the advice of his military commanders with regard to Afghanistan and other key areas. Fortunately, we have a president now that is wanting to secure the border. And so my question gets to you, Mr. Gard-Weiss, with the president's direction to leverage defense capabilities to reduce the flow of illegal immigrants and fentanyl and other illegal drugs that are killing American citizens across our borders. How is the Defense Intelligence Enterprise providing support to that mission?
Congressman, thank you for the question. I'm incredibly pleased with how the department has shifted and aligned rapidly to support the president's priorities along the border. That includes the Defense Intelligence Enterprise. We have surged defense intelligence analysts to support both Northern Command as well as Homeland Security, CBP in particular, Customs and Border Protection, in the sectors along the border. We have increased the use of, and actually for the first time, leveraged airborne collection platforms, ISR platforms, to enable these missions. And we have increased the priority in both of the agencies to my left and right, increasing both the collection and production in support of the priority, not just with regards to migration, but also with regards to fentanyl and the counter drug or drugs coming from our southern border.
Well, I think it's important that we do anything and everything we can to protect the American citizens from the flow of illegal drugs into this country. A lot of Americans die from fentanyl, and we all know people who have died from it. We had 2 young people in my area die from it just a couple of weeks ago, and I hope we continue to increase the pressure and the intelligence sharing to stop it. I want to talk with you about integrating commercial space-based ISR with what we do. The TAC SRT program provides commercial space-based intelligence to the warfighter. How is the DoD integrating commercial space-based capabilities in its intelligence architecture?
Congressman, we absolutely are. We are leveraging commercial space-based capabilities across a range of missions, whether it be for warfighting or for intelligence analytic purposes, both Space Force, the National Reconnaissance Office, and others. I will also say that we are increasing the application of that. We've seen that play both in terms of commercial electro-optical, which are pictures, and radar, both in terms of augmenting and complementing our national systems and our government systems. That we have increased the use of that for sharing, broader use, and frankly, in some areas, they're just uniquely positioned to support from a DoD standpoint. That includes foundation requirements, right, to support National Geospatial Intelligence Agency for mapping and a variety of other purposes. So, Congressman, we absolutely are focused on space-based commercial capabilities and how they can apply to the department.
I have one other question, and I want to preface it with this. I know China is the priority right now, but it's not the only mission that I expect we will have. And one of my primary concerns is that as we draw down systems that will work in non-near-peer engagements, that we're drawing them down faster than we're putting up systems that will work in the near-peer engagements. And so my question for you is, as the DoD divests from kind of the traditional ISR platforms and more towards space-based sensors, I mean, how are we making sure that our combatant commanders don't lose their abilities right now that they need today in favor of future missions?
Congressman, I believe that relative to China, we are going to increasingly and need to increasingly rely on space. But also to your point, we need a range of capabilities to give our combatant commanders options in their theaters, and we are attempting to balance just that. I believe that there will continue to be a requirement for airborne platforms, but we need to balance that with our investment in space, and I look forward to having a conversation with you in the committee once we're able to discuss our FY26 budget that we put forward.
Thank you. Generals, I have several other questions. I'll wait until we're behind closed doors for that. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Jacobs from California, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. So first, the 2025 Interim National Defense Strategic Guidance refocuses our intelligence posture towards strategic competition. How is the Defense Intelligence Enterprise aligning with that new guidance while also ensuring its assessments of major adversaries like China remain objective and free from confirmation bias? Maybe General Kruse, you could start.
So the interim national security guidance that we're all now transitioning to and implementing takes us down a pathway. I don't know that it changes necessarily who the threats are, but it reframes a little bit about where the focus is and where we need to put a variety of our efforts. So this somewhat ties back to Congressman Scott's question, in my view, on the balancing piece. One of the things that the Defense Intelligence Agency in particular owns is a lot of the other intelligence disciplines disciplines. So for example, on the airborne ISR layers, we pull that and reduce that in other theaters. Africa, for example, it does become the human, the overt, the clandestine human, the technical collection, a variety of the other pieces that if we can stitch together along with commercial and open source data, we start to fill in the blanks to go down that path. What that does is get back, I think, to your question about how do you avoid confirmation bias. It is making sure that you're willing to go in and check all of the other all-source issues. For me, every problem now has to be an all-source.